Okay, so we'll start lying down. So come to a comfortable position on your back. You might lie with legs outstretched, or you might have knees bent, maybe knees resting together and feet wide. Just taking whatever position feels right for you this evening. And as you start to settle onto your back, making any final physical adjustments. Then either closing the eyes or softening the gaze. Start to use your exhales to find a greater sense of connection between your body and the ground. So if you're lying on your back, then a sense on your exhale of the whole of the back body, all of the parts of the body in connection with the ground, releasing and softening into the ground a little more. And using your inhales to find and to notice space in the body. So you're not making anything happen here, you're not controlling the breath, but just noticing when you inhale, maybe where the movement is. It might be a rise of the belly or a rise of the chest, maybe an expansion of the ribs. It might be something else, just noticing. Either continuing like this, or if it feels comfortable to you, you might explore lengthening the breath a little more. So just taking a little bit more time over each inhale, each exhale. So the breath remains easeful. There's still a sense of it feeling natural. You're not forcing anything, but just taking a little bit more time over it, so that you can continue to explore a sense of release down into or towards the ground on the exhale, sense of spaciousness, expansion on the inhale. As you continue with this, see if you can at the same time bring your gaze, so your inner gaze. You don't, if you have eyes closed, you can keep eyes closed, but a sense of the gaze behind the eyelids if they're closed, coming to the point in your forehead, just between and slightly up from the eyebrows. So we might think of it as a kind of center point of the forehead. So your focus is still on the breath and using the breath to explore that release in the body on the exhale, spaciousness on the inhale, and your inner gaze is focused on this point in the forehead, just between and slightly up from the eyebrows. Keep the focus on that point in the forehead, And now let go of any sense of controlling the breath. So if you've lengthened the breath, let go of that now. Let go of any focus on the body now, of the release and expansion in the body, and bring your attention fully to the breath. So inner gaze is still at the point in the forehead. And now your mind is focused fully on just being with the breath in its natural rhythm. Just noticing as it comes in, as it goes out. If you want to set an intention for your practice today, then take a moment to do that now. So just seeing what comes up for you, if anything. It might take the form of an affirmation. I am focused. I am centered. And just see what comes up for you and take a moment to set that intention now if you want to. And now, if you haven't already, then bend your knees, bring soles of the feet to the mat. Have the feet, if it feels comfortable to, have the feet resting together. So soles of the feet are into the mat, but the feet are alongside each other. So the inner edges of the feet are alongside each other, if that feels okay. If that doesn't feel comfortable for the body, then you can have them a little apart from each other. And just take a moment here to check in with the lower back. Checking first of all that it feels comfortable and that it feels like you've got a good surface connection between the lower back and the mat. And if it feels like there's scope for increasing that connection, then press into the soles of the feet a little more to help you then start to lift the sacrum, the lower back up off the mat a little. So you're just peeling the lower part of the spine up off the mat and then replacing it slowly, vertebra by vertebra, so that you can feel like as you replace the lower back onto the mat, that maybe you have a little bit more surface area connection between the lower back and the mat. So almost that you've kind of lengthened the lower back a little in doing that. Now use your next exhale to see if you can have a sense of actively drawing the lower back into the mat a little more. Draw navel towards spine to help you with that. And it might not feel like anything physical is happening. That's fine. Just bring a focus to that anyway for a few breaths. So particularly use the exhale to have a sense of the lower back drawing into the mat a little more. Draw navel in towards spine to help support that action. So you're feeling really like as engaged as you can be between the lower back and the mat. Soles of the feet are pressing into the mat. Bring your arms alongside you if they're not already, and see if you can let the shoulders on your next exhale release down into the mat a little more. And you can support that movement in staying in place by rotating the upper arms. So the elbow creases are facing up towards the ceiling. So as you do that, your lower arms, your hands will likely kind of roll up away from the body a little, so that the arms are at a slight angle out from the body there. But it's just as a result of the movement that you're making in the shoulders to draw them down, let them release down into the mat a little more. You're just supporting that with the upper arms rotated. Take a few breaths here. Maybe it feels comfortable to close the eyes, or you could soften the gaze. Come back to the breath. Just for a moment, coming back to that sense of exhaling, finding a bit more softening and releasing the body. So you're still staying engaged through the lower back. That softening and release isn't kind of, isn't giving yourself permission to just kind of let everything go, but more that on each exhale, there's an increased sense of connection between the back body and the mat. Take an inhale. As you exhale, slide your right foot away from you, so the right leg straightens, right toes are then pointing up towards the ceiling. Push out through the right heel. See if you can have a sense of the right hip still actively drawing down towards the mat, navel towards spine, lower back drawing into the mat. The right leg is straight, pushing out through the heel so that the right leg is active. So the right side of the body is still feeling connected with the ground. Take another inhale. And then as you exhale, let the left knee draw out towards the left. So just as you would if we were coming into Baddha Konasana, so we're in a kind of half Baddha Konasana here. And then if there's scope to, you might just creep the sole of the left foot a little further towards the right thigh. So you're not looking to press the sole of the foot against the right thigh, but it might just come a bit closer to it, so it's kind of resting, or there's some contact there between the sole of the left foot and the inner right thigh. Notice what's going on with the right hip here. Is there scope to draw the right hip down to the mat a little more? Has it kind of lifted up a little here? Can you push out through the, sorry, did I say left? I meant right. Can you push out through the right heel a bit more so that you're still really rooted, grounded through that right side? And from that place of rootedness, you can then maybe allow the left hip, the left groin to release and find a little bit more space and opening there. So really what we're working on here is finding some opening in the left groin and some external rotation in the left hip. So you want to stay rooted through the right side. And think about where else the roots are here. So keep the shoulders drawing down into the mat. Maybe you might even notice what's going on with the shoulder blades there. As you let the shoulder blades draw into the mat, can you have even just a subtle sense of the shoulder blades drawing into the back a bit more? Keep the lower back drawing into the mat, navel drawing towards spine. Use your exhale to see if you can find any more release around that left hip. So you're finding a bit more opening around the left groin. On your next inhale, draw your left knee back up. Sole of the left foot back onto the mat. And then rebend the right knee. Bring the sole of the right foot to the mat. Just take a couple of breaths there. Notice how the body feels. Maybe noticing any difference between the two sides of the body. And take a moment here, so we'll take the other side. So take a moment to notice and to kind of reset anything that that might need it. So in particular, check in with the lower back. Does that need a little bit more connection with the ground? Navel drawing towards spine. Press into the right foot a little more. And when you're ready, slide the left heel away, pushing out through the left heel. So you're coming straight in the left leg. And just take a couple of breaths there. Again, check in with the left side of the body. See if the left hip can draw down a little more. So in doing that, you might almost imagine that someone has come along and put their hand kind of on the front of your left hip bone and kind of the sort of edge of the groin, and is kind of like drawing the hip down towards the mat a little more. When you're ready, use an exhale to draw the right knee out to the right. And then you can make any adjustment with the foot if that can creep towards the thigh of the straight leg a little more maybe. And then again, check in with the left hip and the left side of the body here. Has the left hip lifted up a little? And it may well have done. Can you find that rooting, grounding action through the hip, drawing it down towards the ground a little more? Bring your attention to the right hip, the right groin. So we're creating space around there, particularly around the right groin. So you can use your inhale to breathe into that space. Also use your exhale to see if you can find a sense of the right hip releasing a little more, letting go a bit more. So that might manifest in terms of the physical movement in the knee kind of moving down and away from you a little more. It might not, but if you focus on the area that we're actually working on to open and to rotate, rather than any kind of physical movement that might result from that, then you know, that's when you're working with real sort of integrity with the body and deeper awareness with the body here. Check in with the shoulders. Can they release a little more? Maybe can you notice, find any sense of what's going on with the shoulder blades? And it's fine if not, but just check in there, just notice. More breaths here. Staying active through the straight leg, push out through the heel of the straight leg. Lovely. Now inhale back to center with the right knee. And then bend the left leg again, bring sole of the foot to the mat. And then take the feet wider. So take them wider than hip width, maybe more like shoulder width. And just ease out through the hips with some windscreen wiper movements now. So exhaling the knees over to one side, inhaling back to center, exhaling to the other side. And just taking a few rounds like this. Okay. And then coming back to stillness. Okay, so we'll make our way up to seated, to Sukhasana. So you could roll over onto one side and then push yourself up from there. So settle into a comfortable Sukhasana. So take any height that might be helpful here to allow the hips to release a little more. So it's the same kind of principle here. The kind of outward manifestation of the hips releasing a bit more will tend to be that the knees release down towards the floor, and there's almost a sense of the thighs lengthening away from the body as you do that. And again, that's really just an indication that we're finding a bit more release around the hips. So taking height can help kind of create the space for that. Have a bit of a wriggle on the sit bones. On your next inhale, draw your arms forwards and up. Reaching up with the fingertips. Take a few breaths here. Come back to the breath. Come back to using the exhale to find release. So this time it's a sense of releasing down through the body. So maybe soften the shoulders a little away from the ears. The breath coming down through to the sit bones softening and releasing into the ground or the surface beneath them. Using the inhales to start to find a bit more length in the spine. And also the side body here. So particularly with the arms raised, it can, perhaps the side body can feel a bit more accessible to breathe into, to find some length in the side body. Turn your right palm to face outwards. Exhale, sweep your right arm out to the side and down. Bring fingertips or hand to touch to connect with the ground by your right hip. On your next inhale, reaching up with the left fingertips a little more. So you're finding more length in the left side body here. So particularly focus on the left waist, and a sense when you reach up with the left fingertips of the left waist, lifting up and out of the top of the hip bone there, the pelvis. Maybe on your next exhale, you might explore taking the left fingertips over towards the right a little, but keep your focus around that left waist area, because we're doing that in order to find more length in the side body, length in the waist there, not just for the sake of taking the fingers over to the right. Check that the left sit bone is still grounded. Maybe use a little bit of press of the hand, the right hand into the ground to help keep the left sit bone grounded, and also to help keep some length in the right side body. So don't collapse your weight down into the right hand and lose any length in the right side body. Now inhale back up to center, so sweep the right arm back up. Take a couple of breaths here, maybe noticing any difference between the two sides of the body. Maybe there isn't any, but just noticing. Turn the left palm to face out. Use your next exhale to sweep the left arm out to the side and down. Fingertips or hands come to rest on the ground, as close to the hip as you can, as close to the body as you can get it. Inhaling, reaching up with the right fingertips a little more. Bring your focus to the right side body. So again, although the action and the movement is kind of, fingertips, arm, it's actually the side body that we're working with to find more space, find more expansion there. So maybe exploring on an exhale, drawing the right fingertips over towards the left a little more, if that feels helpful to find more space in the side body. If it feels like it just kind of, it causes more contractions than anything else, and causes more sort of hunching of the shoulders, causes the left side body to contract, then it might serve your practice today much better to, say, reaching with the fingertips up towards the ceiling. So just exploring, just noticing. Check the right sit bone is still grounded. Lovely. Now inhale, back up to center, sweep the left arm up. Turn the palms to face outwards. Use your next exhale to sweep the arms out to the sides and down. Okay. We'll take a few cat-cows. So you can either take those from your seated position or come to all fours, whatever feels best for you. Either is, either is absolutely fine. So you're either coming to an all fours position or you're staying in your seated position. If you're staying seated, then I'd invite you to change the cross of your legs to what feels like the less usual, less normal, or downright strange way round. You can feel different for different people. And if you're doing that, just a reminder, I know that I think all of you in the session right now know this well, but just in case for anyone watching on recorded, a reminder that props, using props and support can be really helpful here. Thinking about the fact that one of the key things we're doing in Sukhasana is finding that release around the hips. So that's what we want to support here. It's not a kind of, we don't get any medals for doing it without props. And it can feel quite different for many of us, taking the cross of the legs, the not so usual way around. So for example, I know if I'm taking the cross of the legs my unusual way around, that I really benefit from having a rolled up blanket between the shins and the feet. And that enables me to then release a little more. So just a side note. So you're either in Sukhasana or on hands and knees, and starting to ease into some cat-cow movements just to mobilize the spine a little more. So inhaling, drawing shoulders back, creating space for the chest to draw forwards, tailbone tips up or tips back, depending on whether you're all fours or seated. As you exhale, you're letting the shoulders roll forwards, or if you're on all fours, you're pushing the ground away from you. Shoulder blades draw away from each other as you draw the spine either up towards the ceiling or draw it back. So particularly if you're in Sukhasana, draw navel in towards spine to help with that drawing back movement of the spine. Just keep going at your own pace and see if you can really, as closely as you can, match movement to breath. Just one other note, if you're taking the cat-cow from seated, is that you might find it helpful to allow a little bit of movement of the hands. So the hands are on the knees, but you can allow a bit of movement of the hands back and forward to facilitate the movement of the shoulders. So they're kind of sliding around the knees and back. Once you've got the mechanics of it, just see if you can, for a few rounds more now, really focus on trying to match the movement to the breath as closely as you can. So that as you reach the kind of the peak of your cow pose, as you're drawing shoulders back, chest drawing forward, tailbone tipping up or back, that matches reaching the top of your inhale. And as you reach the peak of your cat pose, as you're rounding the spine up or back, that matches the bottom of your exhale. Lovely. And I think you may well be doing this already, but if you're not, just for the last few rounds, you might want to lengthen the breath a little. Again, the breath is still easeful. You're just taking a bit more time. So you've got a bit more time to fully explore that range of movement there. Lovely. Super. Okay. Coming back to stillness now. And we'll come to standing. So if you want to come via a downward dog and a forward fold, in fact, let's do that. Like, if you don't want to, then feel free to come straight to standing. But let's just make our way via a downward dog and a forward fold. So come to all fours if you're not already, and fingers are spread wide. Take so at the moment, shoulders directly above wrists, but take the hands a little further forwards now, so perhaps like a hand length forward. Tuck the toes. As you inhale, draw the hips up and back. Push the mat away from you with your hands as you do that. Navel towards spine to support the movement. So drawing the hips as high up and high back as you can. Keep pressing the ground away from you with your hands. So you're trying to kind of increase the distance between the outer edge of the wrist and the outer edge of the hip on each side. And then start to walk your hands back towards your feet. Keep the hips lifted high. Lovely. And letting the weight come fully into your feet. Let the shoulders release, the hands, the arms release. Let the head and the neck hang heavy. See if you can have an active sense of
The feet really engaging with the ground here. So it might feel like gravity and the weight of other feet is doing all of that work for you, but can you find even just the subtlest sense of actively engaging through the feet? And from that engagement, there's a kind of sense of a rebound energy coming up through the feet, up the legs, all the way up to the hips lifting high. See if you can draw navel in towards spine to help facilitate that lift of the hips. And the space that creates of drawing navel towards spine allows the upper body to release, kind of cascade down almost a little more. Legs can be, you know, as bent as they need to be. There's no kind of rules about legs being straight. Again, as you lift the hips, you might find that as a result of that, the legs may straighten a little more, but you're not setting out to straighten the legs. Bring your hands onto your hips, have a bend in the knees now. As you inhale, draw the chest forwards and up. So you're keeping length in the spine as you draw up. Lovely. Okay. Come to stand in mountain pose. You can be in the middle of your mat. So feet are hip width apart. Bring your hands onto your hips for a moment. Find a point to gaze at, a few feet in front of you. And on your next inhale, raise your heels up off the mat. So it doesn't matter, it might be a small amount, they might come high, it doesn't really matter. So you're coming onto the balls of the feet. And then on your exhale, draw the heels back down to the mat. So we're going to do this as a sort of repetitive movement. And the focus here is really about matching the movement to the breath as closely as possible. So we're moving with control, as slowly as you can. So if you can take a bit more time over the breath as well, lengthen the breath, then great. So that, and you can keep hands on hips if that feels helpful. We're working with balance here. So sometimes hands on hips might feel like a helpful assist, but equally, if it feels better to have the arms by the sides, then doing that. But as you're inhaling up, when you get to the top of your inhale, that's the kind of top of your heel raise. That's where the movement stops. And then as you exhale, the bottom of the exhale matches the point where the heels make contact with the mat again. So just, if you're not already, just coming to that movement now. Inhaling, heels up. So it's, you know, irrelevant how high up the heels get. It's about finding as much control in that movement as you can, matching the movement to the breath. So finding a point to gaze at a few feet in front of you can be really helpful whenever we're working with balance. It can really help to steady the mind. The mind will send kind of panic messages to the brain as we shift the center of gravity. So if you can keep the mind a little more focused, a little calmer, that can be helpful too. If this feels absolutely fine and like, you know, no problem at all, then if you're wanting to work with balance, then you might explore how it feels to do this with eyes closed. And if you do that, bring your gaze to that point on the forehead. So that's the third eye center or third eye chakra or energy center, which amongst other things is really associated with focus, the ability to focus and concentrate. Lovely. So you can keep going like that, or for an added dimension, you can get the arms involved. So you might explore as you inhale and draw the heels up, you also draw the arms up, and they might come to shoulder height or they might come all the way above. But again, that movement matches the movement of the heels and matches the movement of the breath. And again, as you draw the heels down, then
the heels touch the mat at the same time as the arms come back down by your side. So just working with that a little more. And just noticing what comes up for you here. So be prepared to kind of, it might, you know, to kind of the casual observer, it might not look like we're doing that much here in terms of balance, but that kind of working deeply with control, you know, it can feel like a real challenge. So just notice what comes up in the mind, you know, the ego mind will probably be keen to get involved with anything that feels like a bit of a challenge and think there's a kind of an aim here, a success or not. So if you notice that coming up, just notice it, see if you can let it go, come back to the breath. So you're working, the breath is guiding you here. So take 3 more repetitions of that movement. Take your time to do that, no rush, just knowing that when you've taken those 3 repetitions, then you'll settle in mountain pose. And at that point, if it feels comfortable to, you could close your eyes or soften your gaze. Super. Great. Okay, so come to step to the top of your mat. Come back to your mountain pose once you're there. Bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Again, close the eyes or soften the gaze for a moment. And if you set an intention at the start of your practice, then take a moment to recall that now. Now opening the eyes or lifting the gaze. We'll take a sun salutation flow here and see if you can keep that sense that we just worked with of really trying to closely match movement to breath. So inhale, sweeping the arms up, or you could bring hands to hips. Exhale, fold forwards. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, fold forwards and plant the hands. Pause here for a moment. Bring the hands into contact with the mat as much as you can. Hands in front of and slightly wider than the feet. Bring the weight into the hands a bit more if you can. Take an inhale. As you exhale, draw the right foot back. Draw the back knee down to the mat. As you inhale, either come to your fingertips or draw chest forwards and up and bring hands to hips. Take a couple of breaths here. Option to raise the arms up if you want to. See if you can use your exhale to let the pelvis, to explore whether the pelvis might release down towards the mat a little more. That might be an energetic sense of that happening. It might not, it might not be a physical movement, but just a sense of the pelvis releasing a little more. On your next exhale, draw the chest forwards and down. Plant the hands, fingers spread wide. Tuck the back toes and inhale the back knee up. push the mat away from you with your hands as you exhale and draw the front foot back, and then draw the hips up and back, coming to downward dog. So option here to draw the knees down to the mat, bum back to the heels and come to extended child's pose, or you're staying in downward dog. We're staying here for a few breaths. So other option is extended child's pose like this. Come back to the breath, breathing along the spine, finding that length, increasing that length between the outer edge of the wrist and the outer edge of the hip if you're in downward dog. Exhaling, seeing where you can find a sense of softening a little more. And then preparing to step through with the right foot. So take an inhale to prepare. So you're either in downward dog or all fours. And then as you exhale, draw the right foot forward, bring it in between the hands. Then use your next inhale, either come up onto fingertips or draw the chest forwards and out, hands onto hips. Take a breath or two here. See if you can find a bit more release of the pelvis down towards the mat. Option to inhale and raise the arms up if you want to. Keep pressing into the front foot. As you next exhale, draw the chest forwards and down, plant both hands. Inhale, the back knee up. Exhale, step the back foot forwards, as many steps as you need to come to your forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and up, sweep the arms up, or you can have hands to hips. Exhale, bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Pause there for a moment. Again, you might close the eyes or soften the gaze. See if you can bring the gaze to that third eye center again. So the inner gaze is trained there. Okay. Release the hands down, lift the gaze or open the eyes. So come to standing in your mountain pose again, and again you can be anywhere on the mat that feels most comfortable. So feet are hip width apart. We'll just spend a few moments focusing on mountain pose. So it's probably the pose that we most often come to. That there are very few classes that we do, certainly very few classes that I do, where we don't at some point come to mountain pose. So it's a pose that we're very familiar with, but also one that has the potential to kind of be the one where we can kind of go easy on ourselves or be a bit lazy with it quite easily, because essentially we're standing. You know, this is a very familiar, you know, way for the body to be placed just generally in day-to-day life. And also we've got gravity helping us out here in terms of us creating that connection with the ground. You know, all of our weight is coming down through into our feet. So we're just going to spend a few moments exploring how we can kind of really actively be in mountain pose. If you happen to have a yoga block, then feel free to grab that. Don't worry if you don't, but I'll use one for the purposes of demonstration. Even if this is for another time, other things that possibly can be quite good as a yoga block replacement is something like old style DVD box sets, you know, like back when they were big and chunky, something like that, or a big book of that sort of thickness could work. But you can use your imaginary yoga block, that's fine too. So either you've got, in fact, just leave that down on the ground for now. We'll come to it in a second. first of all, just bring attention to the feet. So just take a moment to see if we can get a bit more active through the feet. As I said, it might feel like there's nothing left to be done there. Gravity is doing all the work for us, but just start by lifting the toes up off the mat. You know, whatever that is for you, it might be that one toe can lift, it might be that all 5 do, but just lifting the toes up off the mat as best you can, and then slowly replacing them. See if you can do that one by one, maybe even increasing the space between each toe a little, so that they're more actively, consciously placed on the mat. And then see if you might be able to find a sense of pressing the ball of the foot, of each foot, into the mat a little more. And it might not feel like anything's happening, but just think it anyway. You know, bring some energetic sense of that happening, even if on a sort of muscular and physical level it might not feel like anything's happening. Maybe see if you can bring that same sense of connection and drawing down into the mat on the outer edge of the foot, just below the little toe. And then maybe see if you can bring a bit more sense of drawing the heels down into the mat without losing the connection elsewhere, without losing the connection to the ball of the foot, to the little toe side. Lovely. So already just with doing that, just noticing the difference between that and when you were just kind of stood on the mat, just letting gravity do its thing. Grab your yoga block or replacement if you have one. If not, then you're imagining that you're doing this right now, and you're placing that block between the thighs. So try and stay active through the feet as we've just explored throughout this. And then imagining or having a block between your thighs, try and imagine that you're now trying to use the action of your thighs to post that brick back behind you, as if someone was waiting to receive that brick and they're just out of reach behind you, and you're trying to get it back to them, like some kind of strange yoga party game or something. So what we're really doing here is we're asking our inner thighs to rotate back. But if we start to say that, then we're really getting the mind involved. So this is where using something like a block, or even just imagining that that block is there, can be helpful, because we're going straight to, like, how does that action feel, you know, rather than the mind getting involved and saying rotate your inner thighs, you know. So see if you can kind of get, even if it's just the subtlest sense of that action going on, still rooted through the feet. And then a very common prompt that I give in mountain pose is to draw the tailbone down. So what we're doing there really is encouraging the tailbone to draw down in order to keep length in the lower back. So with that action in the thighs continuing, see if you can now draw the tailbone down. And what you might notice is that it feels like there's less space to do that compared to when you might normally do it in mountain pose, when you haven't got that action of the thighs going on. But really what we're working on here is to try and find more containment and stability, particularly around the hips. So you could even kind of let go of that action in the thighs for a moment and draw the tailbone down, and you can notice that perhaps the glutes switch on a bit, perhaps you notice that the hips draw in towards the midline a bit, you know, so plenty of stuff happens that helps to kind of stabilize us around here. But now do the same thing, but with the thigh action going on as well. In fact, just notice before you even do the tailbone again, just do the thigh action. And again, just notice what's going on around the hips. You know, there's some kind of action going on there already. And then if you draw the tailbone down as best you can, like within the sort of confines of having the thigh action going on as well, then potentially, you know, what we're kind of working on here is creating even more stability and containment with the hips. You could draw navel in towards spine to help with that as well. Feel free to release from this at any point if this is feeling really tough to, you know, it's not an endurance test, so feel free to come in and out of this, but I'm just kind of talking through a bit more so you can really, like, feel this in the body. And then once we've worked on all of that stability, that containment, then see if you can draw shoulders back and down, creating space across the chest. So all of this work around the feet, the legs, the hips is in order to create that stability from which we can then really find some length in the spine and find space across the chest. So shoulders are drawing back and down, arms are rotating so that the elbow creases face forward in order to help keep the shoulders in place. A sense maybe of the shoulder blades drawing into the back. And just take a few more breaths here. Come back to the breath now. Lovely. Okay, so release. You can release the block, imaginary or otherwise. And we're just going to, so we haven't got lots of time to play with it, but we've done lots to kind of prepare for it. We're just going to have a little bit more play with balance. If you feel like you're done with balance or playing with balance isn't feeling right for you today, then a couple of options. You can either be against the wall, or you can come to lying on your mat and take the same movement that we took at the beginning of the session, where we were kind of in a half Baddha Konasana with the other leg active. So feel free to take that sequence as an alternative. But I'd really encourage you to don't come to the wall because you think you'll be able to kind of do the balance better. Really only use the wall if it doesn't feel safe for you to practice without that support. So just settling into your Tadasana, your mountain pose again. See if you can find all the things we just explored. See if you can find even just some elements of that as you come into your mountain pose now. And then become more engaged with the left foot. So don't, yeah, that kind of active engagement with the foot. So it might feel tempting to bend the left knee to just bring more weight into the left foot, but try and keep the left leg straight. You're actively drawing the foot down into the mat a little more so that you automatically become lighter on the right foot. Bring your hands onto your hips. Find a point to gaze at a few feet in front of you. And then inhale, raise the right foot up. So if it feels okay, try and bring the knee up to hip height. If that's not happening for you, then you can have it lower, but see if you can bring it to hip height. Bring your right hand onto your right knee. Have your left hand on the front of your left hip. So don't have your hand on your hip like this, but just have the hand on the kind of front of the hip bone. Take an inhale, and as you exhale, draw the right knee out to the right and keep that left hip drawing back here. So don't let it follow the right knee round to the right. So just as we were exploring when we were lying on the mat and we were having a sense of the straight leg there, the hip of the straight leg still really drawing down into the mat. It's that same action here. And again, it's exactly the same action. We're finding rotation in the right hip, finding some space in the right groin. We just happen to be balancing now as well. Feel free to come in and out of this, and your body might decide that that's the case anyway. Lovely. So yeah, do come in and out. Don't treat this as an endurance test. If you're liking the idea of working with balance, but this isn't working for you, you could come back to those heel raises we were doing. But it's nice to bring a bit more opening to the hips and groins if we can here. Lovely. Really nice. So we're not taking a full tree pose. You're welcome, I'm not going to talk us through that now because we haven't got time in the session today. If tree pose is a really established part of your practice, and your tree pose is one where you're bringing the foot to the thigh rather than lower down the leg, feel free just for a few breaths here to take tree pose. But otherwise, stay here. So just again, watch out for the ego mind getting involved. It might want you to take tree pose because that feels like more of a success somehow. But just think that what we're really working on today is balance, and also really finding that hip rotation and opening in the groin. So if we can have the knee up higher, that's going to serve us well. If you are coming to full tree pose, just one tip I'll give is try and press the ball of the foot into the thigh first, and then the heel, so that you'll have a greater connection with the thigh. Lovely. Okay. So inhale back to center now, and exhale the foot back down, and then just take a couple of breaths there. Notice how the two sides of the body feel. Notice how the mind is. Let the breath settle. And then become more active through the right foot. So actively engaging with the ground through the right foot, become light on the left foot. Again, like hands on hips again can just be helpful for balance. If you find that helpful, you can bring hands to hips. Find that point to gaze at a few feet in front of you. And then whenever you're ready, let the left foot draw up. Knee to hip height if that's an option for you. And then whenever you're ready, using an exhale to draw the left knee out to the left. So again, you can have the right hand on the front of the right hip bone. So maybe it feels helpful to imagine that you're lying on your back whilst you're doing this. So come back to sort of recall how it felt when we were taking this kind of action, but on our back. And maybe that feels helpful in terms of that, the standing leg hip really drawing back. If this is feeling really comfortable, again, another way of kind of working with balance would be to see how this feels with eyes closed. And if you're doing that, bring focus to the third eye center. And even with eyes open, you can soften the gaze a little and see if you can bring a little bit of a sense of focus to the third eye center. Lovely. And you know, whenever working with balance, I always think it's good to kind of approach it with a sense of playfulness here. So yeah, we're having a play. There's nothing to achieve here. We're exploring. So just taking just a moment or two more. So if you want to come into, if you have a tree pose practice that you want to, where you want to connect the foot to the thigh, feel free to do that. But I'd really recommend, you know, unless that's a kind of a established practice that you have, I'd recommend sticking with this. And also what you can also notice here is what's going on with the hips, like in relation to the work we did with Tadasana. So with the standing leg, can you notice that sense of the hip drawing in towards the midline? Can the tailbone still draw down a bit? I mean, can you find any subtle sense of that rotation of the thigh that we were working with? You know, maybe not, but those are things that you can explore. Okay. Yeah, lovely. Great. Okay, inhaling back to center now. Exhaling the foot back down. Having a bit of a wiggle or a shake out if you want to, and then making your way down onto your back. We'll take just a gentle twist to each side before we come to Shavasana, but you might want to grab whatever you need for your Shavasana so you've got that within easy reach. And also, if you know it's helpful for you to have a support, we'll be taking knees into chest and then drawing to one side then the other. So if you know that it's helpful to have some support, then you can place that to your right now. And then once you're on the mat, then hug your knees into your chest. Just take a few breaths there. Let the body settle, let the mind settle, let the breath settle. Lovely. Release your arms so the arms are resting on the ground at shoulder height. Take an inhale. Exhale, draw the knees over to the right, either coming to rest on the ground or on your support. Take a few breaths here. See if you can use your exhales to let the shoulders release a little more, particularly the left shoulder. Breathe into the space in the side body, space across the chest. See if you can find a sense on the exhale of the hips, releasing towards the ground a little more too. Now inhale back to center. And then when you're ready, exhaling the knees over to the left. Taking a few breaths there, again, seeing if you can use your exhale to let the shoulders soften, especially the right shoulder. Sense also of the hips releasing down into the mat a little more. Breathing into the space in the side body. Inhale back to center. Hug the knees in one more time. If that feels good, you could take a little rock from side to side if that feels good. And when you're ready, making your way into your Shavasana. Grabbing any extra layers, anything to cover your eyes with maybe. As you take your Shavasana, you could settle into your Shavasana by taking a few rounds of breath as we did at the start, using your exhales to find a sense of the whole of the back body, all the parts of the body in contact with the ground, softening and releasing into the ground a little more. Using your inhales to find, notice space and expansion in the body. And you might have the breath a little lengthened here, but just try and have that as a subtle thing so that it really still feels like the breath is natural here, is easeful. You can either stay with this practice or let that go and just allow yourself to be with the breath now in its natural rhythm, just being with the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. And either way, see if you can bring your inner gaze back to the third eye center, that point in the forehead, just between and slightly up from the eyebrows. Just knowing that this space is held for you while you take your Shavasana. Starting to bring some deeper breaths into the body now. Slowly bringing some movement back to the body. Maybe wiggling fingers and toes. Rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to slowly come back up to a comfortable seated position. Either having your gaze soft or eyes closed as you do that. And if you set an intention for your practice today, then just take a moment to recall that now. Bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. And take a moment to be grateful to yourself for showing up for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us, and that we have this way of connecting with each other and practicing together right now. And I invite you to think of anything else in your life that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head down towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing when you're ready. Thank you guys, well done.